Trump debate performance frustrates Republicans. That is a headline from the Wall Street Journal following his debate on Tuesday with Vice President Kamala Harris. The Journal states GOP lawmakers and others fretted that Trump had missed chances to challenge Harris on her record and instead let his own controversies become the bigger story as Harris's needling got under his skin. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, of course, a staunch ally of Donald Trump, called the debate a missed opportunity. And Republican Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota said, quote, he treated it like a mini rally in a lot of respects. You've got to be talking to those swing voters in swing states. He could do that better with details. We're also getting new reaction from inside the Trump camp. One advisor telling NBC News, quote, it was not his best performance, without question. That's from inside the Trump camp. A longtime Republican operative saying, I know everyone in the world has said this, but the inability or unwillingness to realize when he's being baited and not fall for it is constantly baffling. And how about this? Robert F. Kennedy Jr., of course, recently suspended his presidential campaign to endorse Donald Trump, criticized Trump's debate performance.
Vice President Harris clearly won the debate in terms of her delivery, her polish, her organization, and her preparation. I think on substance, President Trump wins in terms of his governance, but he didn't tell that story.
This is from a guy, John, with an affinity for eating animals that he hits on the side of the road. So that's tough criticism.
That issue,
like a bike had decimated it, you know.
The issue really resonating there with Robert Kennedy Jr. for sure. But there has been widespread consternation from both inside the Trump camp and other Republicans who saw that claimed that Trump was prepared, that he was going to go in there and really hammer home the economy and immigration. And he did try a couple of times to shoehorn immigration answers into questions, but then he was derailed by talking like eating dogs and eating cats in Ohio, to the point yesterday where the city manager of that town in Springfield, Ohio, had to come out and hold a news conference. A man named Brian Heck, who I'm sure 2 weeks ago did not have this on his bingo card for what the rest of his life would carry him, had to have a news conference say that didn't happen. And then the Republican governor of that state, Governor DeWine, also said, that's not true. That's not happening here. It has not dissuaded Trump, however, who continues to push it yesterday, as well as suggesting that the FEC take away ABC's broadcast license because of perceived bias in that debate. And I think that for Republicans, their concern is twofold. One is they know that Harris, still unknown to a lot of Americans, came out of there looking good, that she was able to show that she passed the commander-in-chief test. But secondly, Trump's craziness was on full display, and she was able to bait him several times into looking unhinged, into getting angry, into reminding Americans why they got tired of him in the first place. And that, I think, Joe, is something that a lot in those in Trump's close advisors, including someone I spoke to yesterday afternoon, who said, like, you know, as they go back and forth as to whether they'll debate with her again, that they really feel like they gave her a real assist, and Trump formed a real impression in people's minds who are reminded, who may have had Trump amnesia, like, oh, maybe things weren't that bad, maybe we like his economy or whatever it might be, and then they look at that and go, ugh, we don't want to do that again.
No, I mean, 60 million viewers saw that side of Donald Trump. I mean, 60 million, that's all. I mean, the only two TV shows in America that people watch more of, the Super Bowl and Way Too Early with Jonathan Lemire. And outside of that,
if he wants to clean it up, he should do a sit for him.
Yeah, you know what that pressure's like. But Willie, you know, I think everybody was focused, including Republicans, on how badly that Donald Trump did. But they didn't focus on how well Kamala Harris did. And it was really brought home last night. I was scrolling through the news, and I saw a couple of, like, watch parties, people watching Harris and her pausing at certain points, which, of course, you're watching it and you're like, you know, you're watching it in your own home, and you don't get how everybody's reacting. But people were laughing at her, the pauses, cheering. She really, after starting the first couple minutes a bit nervous, she really commanded it. Bob Shrum, obviously a Democrat who has worked on presidential campaigns, and Mark McKinnon, a Republican who's obviously worked on George W. Bush's campaigns and McCain's campaigns. Both said the same thing, that this, they believe, was the best debate performance they have seen since JFK's in 1960. That is their opinion, and I think it's important when we think about how this debate's going to impact people. We take note of the fact that Donald Trump lost, but at the same time, in equal measures, Kamala Harris won. And by doing so, with a massive TV audience, she did clear that hurdle. She proved that she was not what the Trump right has been calling her for the past 4 years.
It was a huge test for her because if you think about the DNC in Chicago, there was a great convention, but that's a pep rally. That's a home game. And she looked great in that, and the party was unified there. But now she steps into the arena with the opponent. She's in the boxing ring. This isn't sparring anymore. It was real. And you make a great point, because Donald Trump's atrocious, historically terrible performance overshadows in some ways the ways in which she instigated his performance, in which she provoked him and got him to go to his darkest places, and then was able to just sit in a split screen. And sort of the subtext was, do you want this again, America? Rational, sane people who just want to live your lives and have a strong economy and take care of your families. Do you want to live through this for another 4 or 5 years? And then she would turn and say, he wants to talk about himself. I want to talk about you, which I think is the message she wanted to drive home. So, Charlie Sykes, as you watched a couple of nights ago, we've heard from many pollsters, people like Frank Luntz with focus groups, people with dial tests saying those dials went way down on Donald Trump when he launched into some of his more insane rants about eating dogs and other things, but also inconsistencies that he cannot explain away on the issue of abortion, for example. What did you see as you watched with your trained eye a couple of nights ago?
Well, you know, a lot of what we saw with Donald Trump, you know, the bitterness, the angry, the fabulism is familiar to those of us who've watched Donald Trump over the last 8 years, right? But this may have come as a revelation or a reminder to tens of millions of people who were tuning in and go, oh, my gosh, who is this angry old man yelling at the clouds here? And as you point out, Kamala Harris is an unknown factor for many, many, many voters. And she put on a really extraordinary performance, not just discipline. I mean, look, she also won that split screen in a rather dramatic fashion. I think that's perhaps a little bit underappreciated. But a couple of things here, and I think you highlighted this at the top of the show. Donald Trump. I mean, and there's a warning here too. You know, that Donald Trump, as we know, lives in a bubble of delusion. But also, what he demonstrated was Republicans refused to take the L. They refuse to acknowledge he refuses to acknowledge he's lost, and also they remain addicted to these fake internet memes even after they have been debunked. They will not let go of the big lie. And I think that this is not a new pattern for those of us who have followed this, but think of this in the context of the election and the big lie. Donald Trump is creating an alternative reality where he never admits that he loses. And no matter how egregious the lie is, no matter how much it has been refuted, they will stick with it. And I think that's kind of extraordinary, how deeply online they've gotten, and how even in, you know, and by the way, talk about blatantly racist, you know, the imagery of Donald Trump saving kittens in America from angry black men. But they're not letting it go, and they won't let these things go. And I think this is, again, a marker and a warning for our times.
You know, Willie, there is a parallel. It's not a strong, really strong parallel, because nothing compares to Donald Trump. But you remember when we were covering the 2012 election, Mitt Romney, his campaign, his family lived inside that Fox News bubble. Mm-hmm. And you'll remember on the front page of Drudge every day was Romney plus 11, because the Gallup polls were so wildly off. And you'll remember that night. And I'm just saying that this bubble that they live in, where people are going, oh my God, they're saying, this bubble leads to disaster most times. And you'll remember that night, Mitt Romney and Ann Romney, two people I love, they, late into the evening, they were sure that there was something that was wrong with the numbers because it went against everything that was in that bubble in 2012 that Republicans lived in, even pre-Trump. And you'll remember Karl Rove saying something's wrong with these numbers. Like even late into the night, nobody could believe it because they had all been living in a bubble. And I'm sorry, but I just got to say it. This is what's happened every year since 2017. They live in a bubble. And they convince themselves that by saying illegal immigrants are coming to America with leprosy, that caravans are coming to eat their children. You know, they think that by saying the most radical, wild things, that was an exaggeration, that somehow they're going to sway the middle. They never do. It doesn't work. It worked for one day in November 9 years ago, and when Donald Trump admitted afterwards to me that the election could have been held on 10 days, and he may have only won it on that one day. And they have tanked their entire party, destroyed the conservative movement based on that one day, because a letter was written 10 days before that literally changed the outcome of the election.